So our last talk for today is actually a non-technical talk. And for those speakers who have joined us a little late, all speakers actually get a gift. But this gift is not the usual bouquet or some fancy item. You actually get a much more precious item in these days, a tree planted in your name. And that's what the next talk is all going to be about. So all speakers are being contacted by Nadeem, and some of you who were at the start saw the tree gifted to me. I'll just flash that once more before Pravin comes on stage. So over to you, Pravin. And just before Pravin comes online, Pravin was also instrumental in inspiring some of us to get this Wi-Fi case started. So hopefully this is another vision which will get started. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Shrikant, for inviting me here. I actually asked him, why are you calling me? Because, but hopefully I'll try to make some connection between what I'm doing now and where Wi-Fi can actually play a critical role in enabling that vision. So actually, I'm an old-timer in Wi-Fi. In fact, I started my career when there were 0 Wi-Fi transmitters on the earth. And now I think we are seeing more than 1 billion around. So it's kind of exciting to see how the technology has evolved so rapidly over these years. But lately, I'm sort of shifted my attention to different sets of issues. And I think we are all seeing these issues around us, the issues around global warming, issues around greenhouse gas emissions. And I think this is a sort of uncontested statement that Earth is actually heating up. And we are all playing a role in it. And Wi-Fi is no exception. So on the one hand, we should celebrate that we have created a technology which is so widespread, making our life easy. But at the same time, the same technology is also consuming fossil fuel in the form of energy it needs to operate. And at a very small level, it is also contributing to this phenomena globally, though the fraction of it is very, very small, right? So I've been kind of a silent sort of observer of this debate which is unfolding. And I recall sometime in year 2008 or 9, I was taking a flight to California, and in the flight there was an article which put out these statements that, before 1800 there were like so much of 600 gigatons of CO2 in the air, and now 850 gigatons of CO2 in the air. And honestly speaking, I mean, I have been doing a lot of math and analysis all my life. The question which popped up in my mind, is this number too big? Is this too small? How does it relate to what I do? And honestly, I couldn't kind of make that connection. And I have seen this problem everywhere, that a lot of the articles and technical material around global warming and so on throws out so many pie charts, graphs, numbers, that it is hard to comprehend what that number actually means. And if all of us as technologists are having difficulty relating to those numbers, and as a result, no action follows, how do we expect masses at large to do anything about it? And I think this thought has been sort of bothering me for a long time. And there have been incidents which kind of precipitated that thinking. So here's a screenshot. We were all, as a group, going for an offsite to Lonavala, from Pune to Lonavala. And along the way, we go through this nice Bombay-Pune highway. And I was observing that, the hills on both sides are on fire. So while on one side you are going for an off-site company meeting and you're building strategy to grow and so on, and then you're seeing this kind of stuff happening around you, which is all contributing to global warming, CO2 emission. And sometimes I used to feel that, we are sort of powerless in terms of being able to do anything about it. So these are sort of the background thoughts which were running in my mind as the tech venture was progressing over the years. And then came a point where I thought, let me start tinkering with it to get a grasp of what all these issues are and how we can make a difference in that area. So in year 2013, I acquired a small piece of land near Pune. And this is a picture of that land, which is completely barren. There's no water, nothing. And started doing some experiments. How do we rejuvenate nature? Because ultimately, rejuvenating nature planting vegetation, growing trees is the way to absorb some of those CSG gases back into the earth. Seems very simple, but why is it that it's not happening at a large scale? So unless you get your hands into some problem, it's hard to get a first-hand feel for what's really going on. So with that intention, I started that journey. While on the front side, a lot of Wi-Fi was happening, on the back side, this drama was also unfolding. So fast forward 9 years. This picture is taken exactly at the same spot, from the same angle, and you can see the original frame is at the bottom left corner. So the remarkable thing about this experiment is that all of this has been achieved without bringing any external water. No pipeline, no borewell, no tankers. It's all been done just by tapping rainwater. And that has given me a lot of hope that if you can only tap rainwater and rejuvenate nature, then essentially you've got a model to replicate it at a larger level. So this is like a sustainability test lab result after 9 years. And obviously, plantation is one of the important parts of it, but often people ask me, how is your tree plantation any different from so many other things they keep hearing about? So I'll try to maybe articulate very succinctly how it is different. So first of all, we are focusing only on ecologically devastated patches of land, which were once upon a time forest, but have now been completely wiped out because of human activity, and a lot of environmental degradation has happened. So we are not planting trees in areas where there is water, where soil is good, because that's easy. It is the land which has got completely degraded is the brutal focus of activity. And by nature, such areas do not have water, because if water were available, people would be doing farming there. So there's no water. So you have to start with bringing water there, and that is done by digging ponds of a design which can hold enough water during the rain season, and you can use that water throughout the year. So in the catchment area where we are working, I've done about 64 ponds, and we store enough water during monsoon, and even in the middle of May, you can go there and see about 3-4 feet of water in each pond. So that has given us a sort of a template that it's possible to create such ponds deep enough that you can get some lifeline. So once you solve the issue of water, the next question comes, what kind of trees do you plant? The choice is very, very important. So here we have just gone to the history that let's study what kind of flora existed in that region 50, 100 years ago. You essentially bring back those species. Rather than trying to bring exotic species or foreign species, you go for the natives which are adapted to living in that environment, because these are the species which are going to bring back the biodiversity, the whole insects, the microbes, the fungi, the animals, the flora and fauna, everything will come back once that supportive ecosystem is there. Now, the question comes up, what is the ROI? I mean, there is nothing produced out of this kind of a forest which can pay for itself. So this project is being done purely with the intention of, we just are trying to undo the damage done by humans. There is no commercial interest involved. We just want to bring back the diversity back to the area where it originally belonged. And and the protection is actually an important part. How do you protect these trees? Because they will be eaten away by the cattle if you don't protect them. So essentially, we select degraded land, arrange water, bring right species, protect it for 3 years, and after that, the jungle starts coming up all again. And since we all come from a tech background, we try doing it in a way where we monitor, log every little plant that we plant, we log every, so just like for a test automation setup, you are collecting every possible data. We are taking the same SDKs and applying it into a very, very different application domain, and there are dashboards being built so that you can monitor the progress of the forest as well. So this, I see, is the easy part of the whole project, because technically there's no rocket science here. What I have learned through the years doing this, that the more difficult part of this whole thing is how do you align humans? Because humans are the ones who have caused environmental destruction, and they are the ones who need to handle and manage to be able to do this kind of thing, where there are too many vested interests involved. The local sarpanch, the villagers, the tribals, the politicians, the builders who want to have land for development and so on. So being able to do a project of this sort in presence of different vested interests is where I found is the biggest challenge lies. And here, one of the interesting sort of insights found was that you have to be able to appeal to people's emotions to be able to find your way out. Just by logic and economic benefit and so on, it's not going to work. And I'll show you some examples of the kinds of innovations we have tried. So this is a picture of an attendance board at the project site. The tribals who come to work, their picture is put up on the board. And every day this board changes because whoever works, their picture shows up. And this picture actually became viral in the tribal community. That people started realizing that they are almost being treated like a corporate employee, have that respect and prestige. So we started with 15 workers, and now the workforce has grown to about 105. So we have a negative attrition problem, that every day more and more people are coming in to work for us. And that I saw as a great problem because that means we can keep expanding the project to a bigger and bigger scale. So that emotional connect got formed between the workforce and the whole project. They saw their future and a sense of purpose in whatever they were doing. The second interesting experiment we did was the roadside plantation we had done. I took the name of all the villagers and put their names on it. So there is a tree in the name of every villager. And when those nameplates are put up, it's not like as if people are starting to rush and start watering the tree themselves, but they became curious whether, their tree is surviving or not. So the person who is responsible for watering, they started chasing him. You haven't gone to do watering today. So we had to step out of the monitoring cycle and automated monitoring started. And the pressure started building up, and we have succeeded close to 100% survival rate just by putting names of locals on the tree. So when this thing started happening that I saw, putting names on the tree creates that emotional connection. When the visitors come to the site, we take their name and start mapping their names to the trees. So just like we have Wi-Fi MAC address, we are creating a MAC address stream for the trees, and essentially we are mapping names to them. And at that point, trees become an emotional points. They are no longer stats that, 60% survival, 70% survival. 100% survival is what you have to achieve for. And it creates that energy among the workforce that, we have to somehow make it happen. And it's beginning to happen. It's kind of fantastic to see that we are getting close to 100% survival rate in all the plantation that we have done. So when this basic template started kind of kicking in, and more people are coming to work, there was a need to expand the project. So COVID was our lucky break. That I am a graduate of IIT Kanpur, and 2020 is the year when the institute was celebrating its Diamond Jubilee. And because of COVID, all the worldwide celebrations were cancelled. So I seized the opportunity, met the director that, you're not going to be able to have your Diamond Jubilee party all over the world. There are 40,000 alumni all over the world. I have so much of land, I can plant a tree in the name of every graduate who has graduated from the institute since 1965. So there are 40,000 of them. So we are now running a crowdsourcing campaign throughout the world where everyone is donating one tree, and aggregate 150 acres of barren land is getting transformed into a forest. And now, other institutes are getting, teased, this is easy, why can't we do it? So now there are 10,000 such colleges. So you can multiply this by 10,000 and suddenly start foresting a larger and larger of land. So a simple primitive, but great applications of that primitive. So then we started kind of becoming more creative. What else can we do? So we have created a Smriti one. So people are now planting memorial trees in the name of, departed souls. And then someone said, why only memorial trees? Why not start planting trees on the occasion of birthdays or on the occasion of marriage anniversaries? So now we are started looking for excuses. Any excuse, and we'll plant a tree for that. And all it needs is an IT backend where you can map that reason to the MAC address of the tree, and you're done, right? So we've got birthday groves, and so then Shrikant and I were talking. Nadeem was kind of teased up. He said, no, let's take this idea to some networking conferences. So we've created a conference grove, and all the speakers today now have a tree in the conference grove. And so you can kind of now get very, very creative. So I recently reached out to McKinsey. I said, you guys have enough money. You can create a tree for every meeting that you do. Actually, forget about it. And they're actually thinking about it. That, every time we do a meeting, let's, plant trees, as many people are in the meeting room. So the key is you got to sort of find that hook which gets people to act. So these are sort of 17 trees which were planted yesterday. And there's a I think barcode for every tree. You can scan it, and you will go to a portal where you can monitor how your tree is doing. So we now are looking for volunteers who will help us in open source spirit to add more features into this dashboard. But that journey has already kind of started, right? So now this whole initiative actually makes a lot of sense in the context of this decade particularly, because United Nations has declared the present decade as a decade of ecological restoration, and such projects are being undertaken all over the world. And I think all of us coming from a tech background, though we have no background in forestry, we can play a role in terms of enabling such initiatives, because tech has a role to play. So I'm kind of hoping that if we can grow this initiative larger, potentially we might be able to inspire more communities around the world to take kind of similar efforts. So that brings me to the point of why I've sort of named this project as 14 trees. And it actually connects back to the first slide that I showed, that when I looked at those numbers, 20 gigatons of CO2 being emitted, and I can't make any sense of it. So the story is very interesting. When my daughter was in 6th grade, they came to me to ask some question about her science textbook. It was a chapter on photosynthesis. So I read that chapter, and it's kind of interesting that after 25 years of perspective on life, if you read a 6th grade book, it throws totally new perspective which you could never have imagined earlier. So when I read that equation of photosynthesis, that it hit me that what we call as nature, life forms around us, which means all the tree, the vegetation, the greenery, the animals, the humans, and everything, what we call a life form, it's nothing but CO2 and water combined. That's it. 99.5% of us is made from water and carbon dioxide. And if you look at that equation of photosynthesis, that's what it is telling you. But we never got that point when we were ourselves reading that. And then figuring out carbon footprint of everything is very, very straightforward. Look at the weight of the tree. You can directly map how much CO2 it has absorbed. So I became curious. Look, yes, we are emitting CO2 through fossil fuel. We are emitting CO2 through flights, air conditioning. Those are big numbers. But we are also CO2 emitters. We are breathing in oxygen. We are breathing out CO2. So I became curious. Let me calculate how much CO2 I am breathing out. So I made a simple spreadsheet. That how much CO2 we release in one breath, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, week, month, and you integrate over lifetime, assuming 100 years of lifespan. And that number is non-trivial. So 14 trees are basically this number of trees if you plant. The entire CO2 you emit in your lifetime will get absorbed. Now that makes such a simple sense that, yeah, I think everyone can easily do that much. When you tell people, you sort of make yourself net zero with AC, travel, the number is so big that, it's not possible. But 14 trees is very, very doable. And I'm finding that that message is beginning to resonate. That people say, yeah, I think I can do it. So now brings an interesting point. Humans are like a 100-watt light bulb that lights up for about 100 years. That's the amount of energy we consume through food. And Wi-Fi is a box which consumes about 10-watt power assuming it's 24/7. So Wi-Fi's footprint is much less than our own footprint, right? So that sort of makes me think that, first utopian dream that since we all come from a Wi-Fi community, let's aim to get Wi-Fi carbon neutral. Forget about fossil fuel and so on. I mean, Wi-Fi is a one box, 10, 15 watt power, and roughly, if you plant a tree, for the entire lifetime, it can wipe out the carbon footprint of a Wi-Fi access point. So now we have started gifting. In fact, the last wireless field day, we gifted a tree to every delegate. And that's the reason we are gifting trees to our speakers, because you can be rest assured now, sleep peacefully, that your home Wi-Fi is now carbon neutral. So the first utopian dream is make Wi-Fi carbon neutral. And the second utopian dream is, well, let's inspire people to plant at least 14 trees in their lifetime. So this is again a sort of a drop in the ocean, but it gets that conversation going. It gets people in the right frame of mind to start becoming conscious of their own footprint, and hopefully beginning of bigger things and newer ideas will come out of it. So at this point, I'll pause and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. In the interest of time, what I'll say is you are available for chai just after. Yeah. So we'll maybe have the chat with you just then. We have a few announcements. I'll request you to stay here.